The Battle of Attu, America's forgotten bloodbath. Ship 549 dead in 18 days of hell. Imagine a place where the fog is so thick you can't see your own feet. Where the ground beneath you is viscous, frozen tundra capable of swallowing you knee-deep in seconds. Where temperatures don't rise above freezing even in mid-May. Where wind knocks you off your feet and rain mixed with snow hit your face simultaneously. Now add thousands of Japanese soldiers, dug in, ready to die, snipers in every crevice, machine gun nests in every ravine, mortars on every ridge. May 1943, Attu Island, Aleutian Chain, territory of the United States of America. 12,500 American soldiers land on the shores of this god-forsaken island to drive out the Japanese garrison. This will be the first battle on American soil since the War of 1812. For the first time in 131 years, an enemy stands on U.S. territory. The battle will last 18 days. It will become one of the deadliest operations of the Pacific War. Casualties will be horrific. 1 in every 4 Americans will be taken out of action, not by bullets, but by cold. The Japanese will surrender not a single position without a fight. Of 2,500 island defenders, only 28 will survive. 28. The rest will die, or kill themselves. This is the story of the Battle of Attu, one of the bloodiest, one of the most heroic, and one of the most forgotten battles of World War II. Today, we're going to tell you how it happened, why textbooks stay silent about it, and what it means for us today. Stay with us. In an hour, you'll learn the truth, the whole truth, down to the last drop of blood. To understand why Attu became a battlefield, we need to go back 1 year, to the summer of 1942, to the moment when the world was still digesting the shock of Pearl Harbor, the Aleutian Islands, more than 300 islands and rocks stretching 1,200 miles from Alaska toward Kamchatka, the edge of the world. Wilderness, cold, fog, a place where trees don't grow, where only birds, seals, and a few hundred indigenous people, the Aleuts, live. Unangan, that's what they call themselves, hunters of whales and seals, people who for thousands of years survived in one of the most hostile climates on the planet. In the summer of 1942, only 40 people lived on Attu Island. 40, a small village, a church, a school, fishing boats. They didn't know that war was already coming for them. June 3rd, 1942. Japanese bombers attack Dutch Harbor, a U.S. naval base on Unalaska Island, in the very heart of the Aleutian Chain. Bombs fall on warehouses, barracks, docks. 43 Americans killed, more than 50 wounded. But it was a feint, a diversion. While Americans fought at Midway, the greatest naval battle of the war, the Japanese quietly occupied 2 remote islands in the western Aleutian Chain, Attu and Kiska. For the first time in 131 years, an enemy set foot on American soil. The Japanese landed on Attu on June 7th. 40 Aleuts were taken prisoner. The Japanese loaded them onto ships and sent them to Japan, to Hokkaido Island. There they were held in internment camps, cold, hunger, disease, unsanitary conditions. By the end of the war, only 24 of the 40 would survive. 16 would die, 40%. It was a tragedy. But the world didn't find out. Because in 1942, America had bigger problems. Germany had captured half of Europe, Japan half of Asia. The Aleuts? Who cares? But American command cared, because Attu and Kiska aren't just 2 rocks in the ocean. They're a gateway. Let's look at the map. The Aleutian Islands are the shortest route between North America and Asia. If Japan fortifies Attu and Kiska, it can, 1. Threaten the U.S. West Coast. Long-range bombers from the Aleutians can reach Seattle in 3 hours. Boeing aircraft factories, naval shipyards in Bremerton, all within striking range. 2. Cut off supply routes to Alaska. The U.S. is building military bases there, transferring troops. Lend-lease supplies to the USSR go through Alaska. If the Japanese control the Aleutians, all of this is threatened. 3. Force America to spread its forces thin. Instead of throwing everything into the Pacific or Europe, the US is forced to keep troops in Alaska. That's a strategic victory for Japan. American General William "Billy" Mitchell said back in the 1930s, "Alaska is the foundation of control over the Pacific. Alaska is the most strategically important place in the world. Whoever controls Alaska controls the world." And now the Japanese are there. What to do? American command understands. They have to be driven out. But how? Problem number 1. The weather. The Aleutian Islands are one of the most hostile places on Earth. Fog 200 days a year. Hurricane-force winds. Waves flip destroyers like toy boats. Temperatures rarely rise above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, even in summer. In winter, down to -4. Building airfields is nearly impossible. Runways are washed out by rain. Aircraft can't take off because of wind. Ships sink just like that, without enemy torpedoes. Problem number 2. Distance. The nearest American base to Attu, 900 miles. That's like Moscow to Paris. Supplies, a nightmare. Reinforcements, a nightmare. Evacuating the wounded, a nightmare. Problem number 3. The Japanese. They've dug in, built fortifications, brought in supplies, know every rock, ready to die. But the Americans can't leave them there, because this is US territory, because it's a matter of honor, because if the Japanese stay on Attu, they stay in America. And in the summer of 1942, preparations begin. The US launches an air campaign. B-24 and B-25 bombers fly from bases on Adak, an island 250 miles from Attu. They bomb Japanese positions, month after month, day after day. But it's not enough. A ground operation is needed, a landing is needed, infantry is needed. The plan gets a code name. Operation Sand Crab, May 11th, 1943. D-Day. Spring 1943, Fort Ord, California. The 7th Infantry Division prepares for the operation. 16,000 soldiers, 3 infantry regiments, 4 artillery battalions, 2 combat engineer battalions. Our recruits. Average age, 22. Many have never heard gunfire, never seen the enemy, never been to Alaska. They're trained for an amphibious assault. Training on California beaches, shooting drills, tactics, physical conditioning. But there's one problem. No one tells them where they're going. No one tells them what the weather will be like. No one tells them they're heading into hell. Commanders think, well, it's May, spring, winter's over. Over. On Attu, winter never ends. May 11th, 1943. Morning. The fleet approaches Attu. 29 ships. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transports, landing barges. The largest operation in the Pacific since Guadalcanal. The plan: 3 simultaneous strikes. Strike 1, west. A scout battalion, 400 men, lands on the western coast from 2 submarines, USS Nautilus and USS Narwhal. Their mission: cross through the western mountains, come out behind the Japanese, and cut off their escape route. Strike 2, north. Main forces, 7,000 men, land at Holt's Bay. Their mission: capture Japanese positions on the northern ridges and advance toward the main Japanese base in the Chichagof Valley. Strike 3, south. A second assault group, 5,000 men, lands at Massacre Bay. Yes, that's really what it's called, and the name will prove prophetic. Force ratio: 16,000 Americans against 2,500 Japanese. 6-1. Sounds like a walk in the park? Wait, the weather. As they approach the island, fog descends, thick, like milk. Visibility, 50 meters. Ships can't see each other. Captains fear collision. Waves, 13 feet high. Barges tossed like splinters. Soldiers vomiting. Equipment falls overboard. Temperature, 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind, 40 miles per hour. Rain mixed with snow. And now, soldiers begin loading into landing barges. They're dressed in light jackets, in boots not designed for freezing temperatures. Because someone at headquarters decided winter's over, barges head for shore, waves wash over them. Soldiers chest deep in ice-cold water. Radio communication fails. The radios are soaked. May 11th, 0640. The northern group lands on Red Beach at Holt's Bay. No Japanese in sight, not a single shot. Soldiers begin unloading. Crates of ammunition, radio sets, machine guns, mortars. But there's a problem. Mud. Attu's tundra isn't ground, it's a sponge. It doesn't absorb water, it holds it. Beneath a thin layer of moss, swamp, knee-deep, waist-deep, Oots get stuck. Ammo crates collapse. Men pull them, exhausting themselves. One soldier recalled, "We walked, every step, like lifting a bucket of cement. Feet sink in. You pull one out, the other sinks. After an hour, you're drenched in sweat. After 2, you can't feel your legs. And then, the cold. Light jackets soak through in 10 minutes. Wind cuts right through them. Soldiers start shivering. After an hour, they can't hold their rifles. After 2, they can't walk. Commanders realize this is a disaster, but there's no retreat. They have to move forward. And then the Japanese open fire. It was an hour after landing. An American patrol climbed a hill. 2 Japanese scouts spotted them. The Americans shot both, but 2 more escaped. 30 minutes later, Japanese artillery began falling on Red Beach. Explosions, screams, chaos. Americans dive into foxholes, but the foxholes are full of water. Men lie in ice-cold slush pressing into the ground. Colonel Hartle, commander of the Northern Group, calls for fire from the destroyer USS Phelps. The ship begins shelling Japanese positions. 5-inch shells tear into the slopes. Then Hartle calls in air support. Fighter bombers take off from the carrier USS Nassau. They bomb Japanese fortifications. And under covering fire, the Americans begin to advance, uphill, under fire. The slopes are steep, 30 to 40 degrees, slippery, mud, rocks. Every step risks a fall. And from above, Japanese snipers. They lie in foxholes, motionless, for hours. An American platoon passes by. Nothing. Then a Japanese soldier fires. 1 shot, 1 body, and silence again. The Americans begin checking every crevice, every bush, every rock. It takes hours, but they're advancing, meter by meter, foxhole by foxhole. By the evening of May 11th, the Northern Group captured the first ridge above Holt's Bay. Hartle sends a report to General Brown. Captured the last ridge before the western arm of Holt's Bay. Casualties, 10 killed, 47 wounded. Sounds like victory. The Japanese retreated, but they didn't surrender. They regrouped on the next ridge and prepared for counterattack. And in the south, at Massacre Bay, things were going even worse. The Southern Group, they landed without resistance. But when they began unloading artillery, 105mm howitzers, the guns sank into the mud. Colonel Alexander, the artillery commander, had warned during planning in San Diego, the tundra won't support heavy equipment, howitzers will get stuck. They didn't believe him. Now the guns sat on the beach, stuck, motionless. The artillerymen turned them toward the mountains and began firing blind, toward where they thought the Japanese were. And the Japanese watched. They sat on the ridges, watched the beach, saw the Americans through the fog, but the Americans couldn't see them. Japanese commanders waited patiently, waited until the Americans entered the kill zone. Machine gunners and mortar crews readied their weapons. And when American infantry began climbing into the mountains, the Japanese opened fire. Hell. Japanese tactics on Attu were based on 3 principles. 1. Patience. A Japanese soldier could lie in a frozen pit for 12 hours straight, without moving, barely breathing, in wet clothes, in mud, without food. An American patrol would pass by. Nothing. The column would stretch out, and then the Japanese soldier would fire. 1 shot, 1 body, and silence again. The Americans were going insane. They couldn't figure out where the shots were coming from. They'd start firing in all directions, wasting ammunition. And the Japanese soldier had already crawled to another position. 2. Knowledge of the terrain. The Japanese had spent nearly a year on Attu. They knew every ravine, every trail, every ridge. They built a network of tunnels and bunkers. They could move underground, disappear and reappear in the most unexpected places. The Americans, meanwhile, used maps from the 1920s. Outdated, inaccurate. Ravines on the maps turned out to be twice as deep, ridges steeper, trails weren't where they were shown. 3. Willingness to die. Japanese soldiers did not surrender, ever. Being captured was considered a disgrace, worse than death. When a Japanese soldier realized he was surrounded, he'd blow himself up with a grenade, or charge at the Americans with a knife, or commit harakiri. American soldiers weren't prepared for this. They were used to enemies surrendering when there was no hope, but the Japanese did not surrender. It broke their psyche. One American soldier recalled, "We found a Japanese foxhole, 5 men inside, all dead. 4 shot themselves. 1 lay with a grenade in his hand, blew himself up. Next to him, a note. We gave it to a translator. It said, 'We will die for the Emperor. Long live Japan.' That was all." Night attacks. The Japanese loved attacking at night, at 2 or 3 in the morning, in total darkness, in fog. The Americans would dig in by evening, set up posts, try to sleep, but sleep was impossible, because they knew the Japanese would come, and they did. Silently, crawling, with grenades and bayonets. Suddenly, a scream, an explosion, hand-to-hand combat. Americans fired blind, killed their own, panic. By morning, dozens of corpses. Soldiers stopped sleeping. For weeks, some started seeing ghosts, hearing voices, shooting at shadows. There were no psychologists in the army back then. The diagnosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, didn't exist. Such soldiers were called cowards and sent back into combat. Many broke, permanently. Trench foot. But the most terrifying enemy on Attu wasn't the Japanese, it was the cold. Soldiers stood in water-filled foxholes. For days, feet wet, cold, blood circulation impaired. Necrosis begins. First, feet go numb, then they swell, then they turn black, then they fall off. It's called trench foot. A disease from World War I. The Americans thought it was a thing of the past. They were wrong. By the end of the first week of fighting, the Americans had more casualties from cold than from bullets. 1,200 men were taken out of action due to frostbite. That's 1 in 10. Medics couldn't keep up. The wounded were evacuated to ships, but evacuation was slow because of the weather. Men lay on beaches, in mud, in rain, waiting their turn. Many died of hypothermia, supply. Another problem, supply. The US Army was used to fighting with a massive advantage in equipment and ammunition, but on Attu, that didn't work. Trucks got stuck in mud, jeeps flipped on slopes. There were no helicopters back then. Everything had to be carried by hand. Ammunition, food, water, medicine. Soldiers carried 90 to 110 pounds. Uphill, through mud, under fire. Many units went without ammunition for 2 or 3 days, without food, even longer. One sergeant recalled, "We ate snow, we chewed on rations, but they were frozen solid like rocks. We drank water from streams, and then spent a week suffering from dysentery. We lost weight, strength, will." But they kept moving forward, meter by meter, day by day. Because orders are orders, because you can't abandon your comrades, because this is war. And by the end of the second week, the Americans approached the key point of the island. Engineer Hill. Engineer Hill. Elevation, 1,280 feet, in the center of the island. Whoever controls this hill controls Attu. The Japanese turned it into a fortress, trenches, bunkers, machine gun nests, mortar positions, all dug into rock, all camouflaged. The Americans tried to take the hill head-on. It didn't work. They tried to flank it. Didn't work. The Japanese repelled attack after attack. General Brown realizes, "We need to concentrate all forces, throw everything at the hill." Artillery pounds for 3 days. Aircraft bomb, ships shell from the sea, May 29th. The final assault. The Americans attack. Wave after wave. They fall. They get up. They keep going. The Japanese fire until the last bullet. Then grenades. Then bayonets. By evening, the Americans break through to the summit. Engineer Hill has fallen. Casualties, 200 killed, 500 wounded, in one day. But now the Japanese are in a cauldron. Americans on 3 sides, the ocean on the 4th. Colonel Yamasaki, commander of the Japanese garrison, gathers his officers. He has about 800 men left. Many are wounded. Almost no ammunition, no food, no water. There are 3 options. 1. Surrender. 2. Wait for death. 3. Die with honor. Yamasaki chooses the 3rd option. Gyokusai, shatter like a jewel for the emperor. A final attack, all or nothing. See prepare all night. They bandage the wounded, say goodbye to one another. Write farewell notes. Some pray, some weep, some laugh, from despair. Yamasaki gives a speech. We will die today, but we will die as warriors. We will break through to the American supply depots, blow them up, take as many enemies with us as we can. The Emperor watches us. Japan watches us. Banzai! 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 The soldiers shout. May 29th, 3:30 a.m. The Japanese attack. 800 men, armed with rifles, bayonets, grenades, knives, many barefoot, many shirtless, wounded men leaning on sticks. They come in a wave, screaming, Banzai! Banzai! The Americans are asleep, some are on watch, but no one expects this. The Japanese burst into the first line of trenches. Hand-to-hand combat, bayonets, knives, screams, chaos. Americans grab weapons, fire blindly. In the darkness, you can't tell friend from foe. The Japanese push deeper, a kilometer in. They capture the medical station, kill the wounded, doctors, medics, cooks, radio men, drivers, all find themselves in combat. Many don't even have rifles. They fight with shovels, rocks, bare hands. American officers sound the alarm, turn on searchlights. A beam of light picks faces out of the fog, distorted, bloodied, insane. Machine guns open fire, mow down the Japanese by the dozens. But they keep coming, over the bodies of their comrades, through mud, through fire. Many blow themselves up with grenades along with the Americans. One American soldier recalled, I saw a Japanese soldier running toward our foxhole, grenade in hand. We shot him, hit him 5 times. He fell, got up, ran again, fell right at the foxhole, blew the grenade, killed 3 of ours. The attack lasts 3 hours. By dawn, the Japanese are spent, ammunition gone, strength gone. The Americans launch a counterattack, push the Japanese back. On the hillside lie 500 Japanese bodies, almost all dead. Those wounded finish themselves off. Colonel Yamasaki is found with a sword in his hand, dead. Around him, a dozen American corpses. May 30th, dawn. The battle is over. The island is taken. Of 2,500 Japanese soldiers, 28 survived. 28. The rest perished or took their own lives. This was the largest Banzai attack of the Pacific War, and one of the bloodiest nights for the American army. But the island was American. The Battle of Attu lasted 18 days, from May 11th to May 30th, 1943. Here are the numbers. U.S. casualties, 549 killed in action, 1,148 wounded, 1,200 men taken out of action, due to frostbite, trench foot disease, and psychological breakdown, 2001. 100 men fell ill from hypothermia and exhaustion total. Nearly 5,000 out of 12,500 were taken out of action, 1 in 3. This means the Americans lost more men to the cold than to bullets. Japanese casualties, 2,008, 172 killed, virtually all, 28 taken prisoner. Casualty ration, 1 to 5. For every Japanese soldier killed, 1 American. For comparison, Iwo Jima, ration 1 to 3. Okinawa, ration 1 to 2. Guadalcanal, ration 1 to 4. Attu was worse. Why? Because the Japanese fought to the last man. They did not surrender. They blew themselves up with grenades because the terrain was perfect for defense. Mountains, ravines, fog, mud. Because the Americans were not prepared. Light clothing, old maps, poor supply. General Brown later admitted, "We underestimated the enemy. We underestimated the weather. We overestimated our own strength. It was a mistake, an expensive mistake." But Attu was taken. and it changed the war in the Pacific. The aftermath. The Japanese realized, if the Americans took Attu, Kiska is doomed. They evacuated the second occupied island in August 1943, without a fight, quietly, at night. They managed to evacuate 5,000 soldiers before the Americans launched their assault. The Americans landed on Kiska on August 15th. They found an empty island, a few dogs, hot coffee in thermoses, and a note. "Thank you for the hospitality. We left." The Aleutian campaign was over. Japan never again threatened Alaska. The northern flank of the US was secured. The Americans could concentrate their forces on other fronts, the Mariana Islands, the Philippines, Okinawa. Attu was a small battle, but it had great significance, and it was forgotten. So, the question, why was the Battle of Attu forgotten? Why is one of the bloodiest operations of World War II barely mentioned in textbooks? Why are there no films? Why are there no memorials in Ivory City? Reason 1. Geographic isolation. Attu is at the edge of the world, literally. It's the westernmost point of the United States. Beyond it, only ocean and Russia. Impossible to get there. No regular flights, no ports, no roads. The island has been uninhabited since 1945. If you want to visit the battlefield, you need a private boat or helicopter, and government permission, and the readiness to be stranded there for a week if the weather turns. The American soldiers' cemetery is there too. 549 crosses, at the edge of the ocean, in the fog. No one visits, no one brings flowers. Forgotten heroes on a forgotten island. Reason 2. Timing. The Battle of Attu ended on May 30th, 1943. That same month, the Allies were preparing to invade Sicily. In July, the Battle of Kursk began, the largest tank battle in history. In November, the Tehran Conference. Aga Inst. The backdrop of these events, a small island in Alaska, seemed unimportant. The press wrote about Europe. In the Pacific, they wrote about Guadalcanal, New Guinea. Attu got lost in the news cycle. Reason 3. Censorship and shame. American command didn't want to publicize the scale of the losses. 1 in 3 soldiers taken out of action, more men frozen than killed by bullets. It looked like a planning failure. Military photographers took thousands of images, but many were classified. Too brutal, too raw, corpses in mud, frost-bitten soldiers, wounded without aid. Only in the 1990s did these photos begin to be declassified. But by then, all the veterans were already dead. Reason 4. This isn't really America. Attu is US territory, but for most Americans in 1943, Alaska was something exotic, distant, not quite ours. Alaska didn't become a state until 1959, 16 years after the battle. Before that, it was just a territory. So many didn't see the Battle of Attu as defending the homeland. It was a war somewhere out there, at the edge of the world, even though it was the only battle on American soil in World War II. Reason 5. The heroes had no voice. The veterans of Attu came home, but they were silent. They didn't want to remember, didn't want to talk. One veteran said in an interview in the 1980s, "People asked, 'Where did you fight?' I said, 'Attu.' They asked, 'Where's that?' I explained, 'Alaska.' They said, 'Oh, I see. It wasn't that bad there.' I stopped talking." Many veterans suffered from post-traumatic stress, alcoholism, depression, suicide, but there was no help. Psychology hadn't yet recognized PTSD as a diagnosis. They died quietly, forgotten. What remains? On Attu today, ruins, Japanese foxholes, American bunkers, rusted helmets, shell casings, bones. The island has been declared a wildlife refuge. The only inhabitants, seabirds and seals. Few years, an expedition of historians goes there. They collect artifacts, take photos, leave, no one else. But the Battle of Attu matters. Not because it changed the outcome of the war. It didn't. Not because thousands died there. Thousands died every day in 1943. The Battle of Attu matters because it shows the cost of war. The real cost, not parades, not flags, not heroic speeches, but cold, mud, fear, pain, death, oblivion. 549 Americans died defending a patch of tundra that no one had heard of. They were buried there. 10 years later, the cemetery was abandoned, the crosses tilted, the names erased, but they died following orders, defending their country, doing what they believed was right. And we are obligated to remember. Because when we forget war, we move toward the next one. When we romanticize war, we prepare new victims. When we are silent about the cost, we devalue the sacrifice. Attu is a lesson that war is not glory. It is mud, blood, and death. A lesson that every soldier is a person, with a name, with a family, with dreams. Thank you for watching to the end. If this story touched you, leave a like. Share the video with your friends. Write a comment. Tell us, had you heard of the Battle of Attu before? Did you know that the only battle on American soil in World War II took place in Alaska? If this video reaches 10,000 likes, we'll make a follow-up. We'll tell the stories of individual soldiers, show what Attu looks like today, find descendants of the veterans and record their memories. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We make documentaries about forgotten battles, unknown heroes, and the hidden corners of history. The next video will be released in 2 weeks. Topic: the Battle of Kiska, landing on an empty island. Yes, the Americans stormed an island the Japanese had already abandoned. What went wrong? How many died? And who was to blame? All of that in the next episode. But for now, remember. Remember the 549 Americans buried on Attu. Remember the 2,500 Japanese who died there. Remember the 40 Aleuts taken captive. Remember all who fought in the forgotten war. Because they deserve more than oblivion. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. And remember, history is not what happened. History is what we remember.